Football Barbie, where we talk about anything and everything football. Today I have a special guest, Mr. Michael Sartain. So tell them about yourself.
Listen, I have a podcast where I offend people pretty frequently, but I used to work in sports radio. I used to work in sports radio 1310 The Ticket, like back, 1994, 1995, I was doing that. It was always my dream to be in sports radio. It's something that I've been pretty obsessed with. But if it was up to me and I wasn't doing the podcast I'm doing now, all I'd be doing is talking about football and basketball. So when I saw that you had a podcast, I was like, how in the world am I not on this? We got to do this immediately.
Hold on, wait a minute. Y'all thought I was finished?
Yeah, I definitely think you're probably one of the most knowledgeable people that I know with football. Now, I think it is interesting, which will be in once we start talking, that he is a Dallas fan and I am an Eagles fan, and technically we are the rivals in football, so it definitely makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah, I don't think technically. I think we are rivals. If I went to go watch a game back at the link, somebody would hit me in the fucking head with a battery or something. I think that's the way it works. But if you came to Dallas, you would notice that everyone is very quiet and calm, and you'd notice you'd have $25 hot dogs and $50 glasses of beer, and you get to look at art while you were in Cowboy Stadium.
No, I did actually go to the Dallas Stadium on a complete side note, and I did think that was a really good actual stadium. I do like that stadium better than the Eagles Stadium, for that matter.
Yeah.
But it was funny because when we met Dallas fans, I went with my mom, so my mom's a Vikings fan. We went to Vikings' first Dallas game, and we were asking them, and they said, honestly, it's Green Bay fans that like the least. They said if Green Bay comes, like they'll have the taxi cab take them to the wrong spot type of situation.
Yeah. For sure. Have you ever heard those stories about, Lawrence Taylor, obviously, right? It's
yes.
like a legend. So Lawrence Taylor would, it's not a secret. He would stay up all night doing blow and having sex with prostitutes. And he would, sometimes when he was playing against a team, he would send prostitutes to the opposing left tackle's hotel room, with drugs. Have you never heard these stories?
I don't think I've heard that. No, I have not.
Charles Barkley used to say, it's like, I knew there's some guys I was playing, I would send a limo for them. There were some guys you wanted to play against. Lawrence Taylor, it's really interesting because one of the things I do want to talk about is how the salary structure in the NFL has changed over like me watching the last 40 years. The thing that's changed is like you used to pay offensive linemen all the same. And then Lawrence Taylor came in the league and started destroying left tackles. And then your best lineman, like a guy like Zimmerman, you started paying left tackles more. And now that's what you see. You see tackles make more than guards, make more than centers. And where did that whole thing came from? It came from these monstrous defensive ends. And now you see right now how you have Michael Parsons come. And if your left tackle is not an alpha male, you don't have a chance of moving the football at all.
Yeah.
It's nothing but screen passes and draw plays. You cannot throw the football at all if you can't block this guy. And that's the thing that you saw that happen with Aaron Donald when they went to the Super Bowl. They would just line Aaron Donald up on this left guard who
He's
had
definitely a great player.
No chance. Like they would do this thing where they would put three Ashawn Wright, whatever his name is, they put him way out right, and then they put Von Leonard, Von Miller. They put him out there wide.
I just said a short one.
And they would just leave. You'd had Aaron Donald, who's this all-pro god at D tackle, and he'd go up against some rookie guard, and he would just whiff every time. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that you can do. All of your linemen have to be great, which is why offensive linemen used to get paid shit, and now they get paid pretty well.
I definitely think offensive linemen are definitely an important part of the whole team. You need them in order to do well, for that matter.
Man, you can do well with a great O-line and not even have a good quarterback. I remember a lot of teams did that. I remember the Baltimore Ravens won a Super Bowl like that.
With Joe Flacco or what?
No, man. I'm talking about with
while back.
Yeah, no, the one they won in 2000 with his name is slipping my head right now, but definitely the worst starting quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, and I can't remember what his name is right now. But you see this all the time. Brad Johnson went to the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, and man, he was not a good player. I mean, he was all right. He was decent, but he was not that good. Now you see it sometimes, but it's one of these things, man. Where you watch these teams and it's really interesting over the years because when I first started watching football, you ran the ball more than 50% of the time, and now a good team, there's four.
Throwing the ball?
I think there's 4 teams that run the ball more than they throw it. Now, I think it's like Chicago, Baltimore, Dallas.
Eagles, probably.
Maybe the Eagles. But there's one other team, and I can't think of it. Maybe it's San Francisco. I can't remember who it is. But they run the ball a ton. But most teams are like 65% pass, and the best offenses in the league throw the ball way more than they run it. And it used to not be like that. It used to be where teams would just run the ball all the time. And because of that, the quarterback is more important. And that's why you see like these disproportionate salaries where like quarterbacks are making NBA money now.
It's crazy. I just did a video about the highest paid quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson now squeaked at number 1.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes. Oh, no, Hurts is 2.
Yeah, but it's always going to be whoever just got the most recent contract because they're all negotiating under the same salary cap rules. So you can't they'll never get disproportionately crazy, but they'll always be almost 2x what any other player makes. So like when you think about right now, like a really good wide receiver or tackle is going to be 21, 22 million, and a QB is going to be 50, right? You don't have this disparity in the NBA. In the NBA, you have you have a max contract, and like pretty much everybody makes around that same deal at a max contract. In the NFL, because you have a salary cap and you can pay any player whatever you want as long as it stays under the 225 million, 260 million, whatever it is right now.
I think it's 260.
But as long as you do that, you can pay them whatever you want. And what happens is quarterbacks over time, as you throw the ball more, become disproportionately more. Their wins against replacement by position, it becomes higher and higher for quarterbacks than it does for any other position. So I was reading, Pro Football Focus was saying 35% of wins against replacement is one position, it's quarterback. You don't have, the only thing that would be equivalent to that is a starting pitcher in baseball, maybe a goalie in hockey. But you don't have anything equivalent to that, to where 35% of a win comes from one player. You see what I'm saying?
I agree.
Yeah, so like a great example is Tom Brady can make up for a bad offensive line because he gets rid of the ball so quick.
Exactly.
Right,
He's
or
definitely a goat, I would say.
Lamar Jackson can get over a bad offensive line because he can take off, and if he doesn't have time in the pocket, he can take off and run.
Yeah.
So quarterbacks can make up for the fact that other players aren't as good. You can also screen passes. There's just all kinds of ways you can make up for it with the run game. You can all kinds of different threats that you have, but QBs are just by far the most important position, which is why when the Jets did what they did, it made sense to me because you just have to take a shot. It's really funny. This is a real weird analogy, but back in the 90s, the best teams in the NBA all had great centers. There was Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, it was Patrick Ewing, it was Alonzo Mourning. And if you didn't have one of those centers, unless you had Michael Jordan, if you didn't have one of those centers, you didn't have a chance. And now it's like that with quarterbacks in the NFL. You don't really have a chance unless you have one of these great quarterbacks, right? But I'd say there's only 12 good quarterbacks in the NFL.
Okay.
There's only really good, because the rest of them are going to be gone in a couple years. I never thought Matt Ryan was great. I think he was a great product of a system. But there's only 12 really good quarterbacks in the NFL. But you have 32 teams, which means the other 20 teams have to
currently in the NFL.
Yes. I'm saying Teddy Bridgewater is not a good quarterback. He should be in the NFL.
Okay.
But he's good enough to be in the NFL,
Correct.
right? But when you consider how much money Jameis Winston makes.
Well, Kyler Murray, the video that I did, Kyler Murray is technically now the 4th highest paid quarterback, and I don't think that he's by any means worth it.
So this is a great discussion. So Tom Brady, let's go back to the year he came to Tampa Bay. The year he came to Tampa Bay, because he won Super Bowl. It wasn't how good he was. It's how good he was versus Jameis Winston. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's what it means. So it's wins against replacement. Jameis Winston is a great example of a replacement level quarterback. In his case, it's very unusual because he throws for so many touchdowns and he throws for so many interceptions. Right. But a Ryan Fitzpatrick, great example. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the definition of an average NFL starter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
He's not going to be with the team for a long time. You're never going to give him a $200 million contract, but he's good enough to start for an NFL team. Most teams have that replacement level quarterback. The debate is for something was a couple of years ago is Hurts or Fields one of those guys? Now, obviously for Hurts, the debate is over. People will think Hurts is a great quarterback.
As I did say, as an Eagles fan, the first 2 years when anybody asked me how Hurts was, and I was like, honestly, I think he fucking sucks. I don't like Hurts at all. I think his first 2 years, he ran when he was scared, and his throwing accuracy was horrible.
But you're old enough to remember McNabb.
Yes, of course.
Okay, but that was all McNabb was too. Do you remember the first couple years? They had Pinkston and Thrash at wide receiver, and McNabb could not fucking complete a pass to a wide receiver. They would go whole games, and he wouldn't. But the thing is, though, what happened was because he was so fast, he could make up for it. But by the way, Warren Moon was like that originally in the USFL too. Some of these guys would come out and they couldn't read an NFL defense, so you just had to either make it real simple, what's his name? Who's the head coach of the 49ers right now? I went to college with him. Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan and me are the exact same age. We went to UT Austin at the same time. Okay. When Shanahan, he has a really friendly offense. If you watch, what's his name, Purdy, when he drops back, he goes one read, dump off. That's all it is. He drops back, one read, dump off. If you watch Cam Newton when he first started playing, it was...
It's a shame. I think that now, is he even playing for anybody right now?
Cam Newton...
He was
it's
obviously Panthers, and then he went to, what is it, the Patriots?
No, he's playing with the Patriots. If you want to, this is really like super advanced level study here. There are quarterbacks who you can just literally give him 5 reads and he can make 5 reads. There's a few of the guys who can do that. That's Drew Brees in his prime. That's Aaron Rodgers. That's Tom Brady is the definition of this.
Yes.
Okay, and there's a couple of guys that are like borderline that. I would say Justin Fields is not there, right?
No, I don't think he's there yet.
I would say Lamar Jackson is halfway there. But because of his feet, he can make up for it by creating more time. Yes. And I would say a borderline player like that would be Dak Prescott. Like, is he quite there? Maybe. Sometimes he is. Sometimes
well, you're
he
the Dallas fan, so what do you think of Dak Prescott?
I think he's terrific. I think he can be a top 12 quarterback. The problem is he's in one of these situations. Again, another weird example. Do you remember Kurt Warner, right?
Yes.
If you blocked
Kurt Warner, I had a fantasy team, and the year I had a fantasy team, it was Kurt Warner for Arizona Cardinals, and then I had Brett Favre when he played for the Vikings. Sure. He was my backup.
If you had Kurt Warner and you were blocking for him, he was the best player in the league.
Yeah.
If you had Kurt Warner and you weren't blocking for him, if he didn't have Orlando Pace at left tackle, they were not good. So when you see Kurt Warner with the Giants, they're not good. He's getting fucking waylaid. When you see Kurt Warner playing for the Cardinals or playing for the Rams, they're terrific. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have to put players in a position to win. I think that Dak Prescott is one of those players that you have to put in a position to win, and when you do, you can win big. Whereas I believe with Aaron Rodgers or with Tom Brady or with Drew Brees or with Peyton Manning, they can figure it out even if you don't put them in a position. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So there's some they're called floor raisers and ceiling raisers. Some guys are floor raisers. That would be like you don't have any quarterback, so you bring Ryan Fitzpatrick into your team because you just don't have a quarterback, right?
Yeah, you need somebody to fill a slot.
He's filling the slot, but he's also training your rookie. Right, he's a floor raiser.
That's true.
A ceiling raiser is like Aaron Rodgers. Like Aaron Rodgers is going to make it work no matter who you have, as long as somebody.
Well, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers then. What do you think about Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets?
From the Green Bay Packers standpoint, a lot of people, for Packers fans, are like, how can you let this Hall of Fame quarterback who's still like playing at near MVP level? How could you possibly let him go, right? Because remember, they were talking. When they drafted Jordan Poole, was Jordan? I can't remember. Was it last? Yeah, Jordan Love. When they drafted Jordan Love, he had just had a bad year, and how did he respond? They used that pick on Jordan Love, and he goes off and he becomes league MVP the next year, right? So he showed that he still had that talent pool. If you're the Packers, you're in this situation where you're like dating someone who's always threatening to break up with you, but they're like awesome. Like you're dating a 10, but the 10 is always like threatening to fucking leave. So like eventually you're like, hey, you know what? You should just fucking leave. How about just leave? And I think that's what happened. They got a good haul for him. If you're the Jets, you're just a perennial loser. Like you're a snake bit team. And the most important position is quarterback. And when you see what happened with Brady, they put Brady in a position to win where they had really good skill position players, which
Leonard
is what
Fournette
they have.
was amazing.
I mean, Leonard Fournette was amazing, but I'm thinking more of their wide receivers. Like they actually they were worse than the league in rushing attempts. I think more along the lines of the receivers that they had, and they had Tristan Wirfs, and they had really really good offensive linemen. You know, I think you have a similar situation with the Jets where you've put together this really good team around him, but they didn't have a good quarterback. And now you have this quarterback that can just kind of make it work. You have Sauce Gardner is probably going to be the best corner in the NFL here pretty soon. Like they have really, really good players at both wide receiver positions and both corner positions. I think that's where you start, and you have really, really good playmakers on the offensive line, and you have a really good running back. So I think with the Jets, it's not whether or not this is going to work. It's like from a statistical standpoint, you have to take this chance because, like I said before, if there's only 10 or 12 good quarterbacks, and then amongst Aaron Rodgers' caliber, there's maybe 10 quarterbacks who've ever played football at that level, then I think you have to make that trade. So that's one of those things where it's like, you know, you have a quarterback, with Bryce Young, taking him first, right? Yes. It was one of these situations where Bryce Young is good enough to where you can't, the correct decision with the first pick is to take a quarterback. So you can't not do that. And so like if he turns out to like be a bust, you still can't blame them for taking Bryce Young because that position is so much more important that blowing a first round pick on a quarterback and getting it wrong and then taking another quarterback the next year is still worth it because once you get one, you're set.
Well,
and
I mean,
so that's
everybody
why it's so
starts
important.
off as a rookie somewhere, so you never know how they're going to be. I mean, like I said, Jalen Hurts is now in his third, technically fourth season, and now he's finally, you know.
For sure. But when you look at Carson Wentz, he regressed horribly.
Yeah.
Right? Goff looks like he's playing better, right? I thought Goff was like going to fall off the map. And again, I know people are really down on Dak Prescott, but I promise you, like he'll have a situation where you put him in a situation to win and he does well. And that's all you can ask for most quarterbacks. The ones that are like that God tier quarterback, there's only like 2 of them. And Brady's gone. And so, for you to say like there's
So who's left?
it's Mahomes and it's Mahomes and it's Aaron Rodgers, and I would say it's also Buffalo. What's his name right now? I'm trying to think.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen. Like I would put those three guys in that same position. By the way, Josh Allen is a great example of what you were talking about with Hurts, which is a guy who couldn't make reads. He had horrible ball placement in his first year in the league, right?
Yeah.
But then he comes out and he starts running the ball, which gives him more time, and they slow things down for him. Again, one of the things, if you ever watch when Cam Newton first got in the league, it was just one read, and he had one high-low read and then take off and run. One high-low read and then take off and run. They did the same thing with Donovan McNabb. They did the same thing with Michael Vick. They're doing the same thing with Fields. Fields is one read and take off. They do the same thing right now in San Francisco.
Fields. I keep thinking you're saying Fields.
Fields, yeah, in Chicago. And they do the same thing with Josh Purdy. If you look at Brock Purdy, watch his eyes. He drops back. He's got one read, and then he takes off and runs. And then the way they make it work is there's a triple reverse going behind him. You know what I'm saying? They've got two guys they got a guy in motion, and then there's a double reverse, and then there's a screen over here to the left, and then he's trying to hit somebody over the middle, Ayuk or whoever, and when you say or Kittle. And they make the offense very quarterback friendly. Whereas if you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers, it doesn't have to be quarterback friendly. He can make the difficult read. He knows very much when he goes up the line of scrimmage. He's seen it all. He knows when he sees man cover 1. He knows when he sees man cover 2. He's not going to be fooled whenever you throw a zone blitz at him. He knows when it's engage 8. He's seen it all, and so he can make those decisions quickly. And that's the reason why you have to trade whatever you can trade to get a player like that. So the Aaron Rodgers thing. Is it going to work out? I don't know, because quarterbacks don't grow on trees. I just think that this is if you're the Jets, you have to make that trade. There's no possible way you can't. If you like, I know the Cowboys wouldn't have, but
I seen something about the Jets. They haven't made the playoffs or something since 2015.
I mean, but that's another reason why you got to do it. I mean, look how bad Tampa Bay how bad Tampa Bay was before they won the Super Bowl with Brad Johnson and those guys. Like it's just one of those situations where you just kind of have to do it. You're bad until the Rams were a fucking joke for 20 years before they got Kurt Warner, right? So
Agreed.
so it's one of these situations where you have to take a chance to. I mean, the ultimate example is Cleveland with LeBron James. Like that's you make the trade, you have to make that trade or make that move in order to change the culture of your whole team. The Jets are a snake bit team that have kind of had a really bad front office for a long time. I would like to see something like that happen with the Cowboys, but it will never happen as long as Jerry Jones is running the team, where you have you have a culture of accountability. When you have a culture of accountability, it goes throughout the entire team, and those are the teams you end up seeing winning the Super Bowl. That's why I don't think the Cowboys that's always going to be the problem. It's like when somebody does something wrong.
But the Cowboys have won a Super Bowl when Jerry Jones was the owner, though, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't picking the players back then. So here's if you want to know the problem with the Cowboys over the last 26 years, it's not that they pick bad players. Their draft room is actually terrific. Mm-hmm. Right? If you look at their draft picks, they hit actually at a higher rate than average. Well, the problem is with the Cowboys is that when they fall in love with their own players, like for instance, when you date a guy, you think your boyfriend's better than everyone else's boyfriend because he's your boyfriend, right? So it causes you to not want to go get a different boyfriend because he's your boy, because you picked him. So because you picked him, you're biased to think he's better than someone else's.
So that's what you're saying. Jerry Jones thinks about his own
That's
players.
what Jerry Jones, but Zeke Elliott is the greatest example of all time. To give that moron money when he was 2 years away before he needed an extension, to go off and pay him like that when everyone was telling him, don't pay a running back. Don't pay a running back, and then don't pay Zeke. Listen, I don't live in Dallas anymore, but I'm from Dallas. I've been to Dallas a couple times. I've seen Zeke Elliott out drunk off his ass 4 times, and I don't live there. Zeke Elliott did not take football seriously. This was so obvious to me. You had the situation with the sexual assault charges. You had the situation where he just grabs that girl's boob on Mardi Gras. You had the situation at EDC where he's clearly taking Molly and he fucking shoves some security guard. This guy did not take football seriously, and you gave him $18 million a year. The shit is fucking crazy.
Well, now what about Pollard? So, because the video that I did, apparently Pollard just had better numbers than Ezekiel Elliott last season, so I chose him over.
Right, but here's the question: Pollard's had the better numbers than Ezekiel Elliott for the last 3 years. Why didn't he start? He didn't start because they had given all this money to Zeke.
That's why. So they're making sense.
It's called sunk cost fallacy. It's also the reason why Russia won't retreat from Ukraine. It's like one of these things where I've put my dick so far into this thing I can't fucking get out without getting it cut off. That's essentially. Sorry, I'm sorry for your viewers, but that's essentially what the fucking problem
Mostly
is.
guys anyway,
Yeah,
so I'm sure
but
they don't care.
That's the problem. Like again, you've sunk so much money into this house, this money pit house. You sunk so much money into your fucking car that you can't get rid of it, and that's essentially what happened with Zeke Elliott. That they just couldn't move on from the fact that they made such a horrible mistake. And similar thing happened with Romo, and to a certain extent, it's what happened with what's his face? Bryant. Des Bryant. It's a similar situation.
He was good, though.
Yeah, he was good until the end when he wasn't.
Yeah,
and he was. But the problem is, no one else knew. Here to illustrate my point. I'm gonna tell you, show you exactly what's gonna happen. Zeke won't even get signed to another team.
You don't think he'll get signed this year for another team?
I think the fact that the Cowboys were starting him was doing him a favor. I watch Zeke and I watch all these other NFL running backs and like look at all the NFL running backs that are free agents right now. Dalvin Cook is a free agent. Are you kidding me? Like there are some.
I think it was because of the contract, because he won it. He was supposed to get the $10.4 million from the Vikings.
Yeah, but the Vikings don't want to pay him because Vikings are smart. Don't pay running backs. That's how you just go draft it. Here, I got a great example for you. What's his name? King Henry. Derrick Henry.
Oh, Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry in his prime.
He's fantastic.
He's fantastic. Is he worth drafting with a first-round draft pick? What do you think?
You think you should draft him first?
I'm asking you, if you could redraft over again, do you think King Henry is worth drafting with a first-round draft pick?
I think so.
Then why was he taken in the second round?
The money.
No, my point is teams are smart and they know it doesn't matter how good running backs are. You take running backs, you don't take them in the first round because they're replaceable. You get 4 years out of them, and then once you get to that place where you have to pay them a bunch of money, you just let them go. And the problem is everyone figured that out at the same time, which is why Dalvin Cook isn't getting his money.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen to Saquon Barkley too. Like everyone,
I did a video about him. He might hold out for either his contract or something.
And he should try to get his money. The problem is no smart front office is going to pay Saquon Barkley $18 million a year with the injury history that he has.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter this is the problem people don't understand. It's not how good he is. It's how good he is compared to Latavius Murray. I'm just throwing out an average backup running back. It's
he
how
just got signed. What was it? Buffalo? What did I say he got signed to?
But does it matter? He's played on like 15 teams.
Yeah.
Like the thing is, Deontay Foreman, right? Deontay Foreman's a great example. He played at Hook'em Horns, right? Incredible running back at Texas. Deontay Foreman is a perfect example of like he's a backup running back who had a 200-yard game this last year as a backup, right? And then you look at him and you're like, why would I pay Zeke Elliott $18 million? If there's no, it's not that they're better. It's like, are they $18 million better than a guy could pay $600,000 a year to be a backup? You see what I'm saying?
Point. It's a very good point.
It's wins against replacement. So could I go out there and we could just throw some names out there. Like Dalvin Cook is going to be too expensive, but like throw the names of any backup running backs that are out there. And then then ask yourself the question, could these two guys give you the same production as, let's go here. Like, let's say right here, Kareem Hunt led the league in rushing.
And I honestly don't even know who that is.
Kareem Hunt, he led the league in rushing for the Chiefs, and then he had an assault charge, a domestic abuse charge, where he ended up kicking this woman, got cut from the Chiefs, and ended up playing for the Browns behind what's his name, a Chubb.
What do you think about Alvin Kamara? He has a court date on July 31st.
Again, I love Alvin Kamara. He's great. Now here's the thing: I will give Alvin Kamara a pass, and I will give what's his face in San Francisco, Christian
McCaffrey.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey. I'll give him a pass because they catch passes out of the backfield because they can actually
play.
Well, it's not that they can play; it's just that they're not just running backs. Running backs are the most replaceable position on the field. And the reason why they're the most replaceable is because when you look at body type, think of Jonathan Ogden. He's 6'9". He played left tackle for the Baltimore Ravens for like over a decade. Yeah. All pro, several years in a row. There's just not that many 6'9" human beings on the planet, right? When you think of like Tyron Smith, who played for the Cowboys, Tyron Smith is 6'5". He probably can bench press 600 pounds. Right? There's just not many. And you look at it, he has this tiny waist and these massive arms. He has to use leg braces on his arms because his arms are so big. There's just not many Tyron Smith body types that exist in humanity. So you have to pay Tyron Smiths more. How many guys do you know throughout your life that are 5'9" and athletic? 1 billion? Yeah. There might be 2 billion athletic 5'9" athletes. On the
6'9"?
No, but I'm talking 5'9". Yeah. So running backs are 5'8", 5'9". You see Deuce Vaughn, who plays for the Cowboys, he's 5'5", right?
That's short.
Yeah, but when you see that, You see that the population that you're having to compete against playing running back is are you athletic, short, and skinny, and like somewhat muscular, and you're under 6 feet tall? How many athletes do you have to choose from? We're talking 100 million athletes. But when you were talking about a guy who's like a quarterback, who's like incredibly fast and who's 6'5", now we're dealing with a different type of athlete and has the skill set to be able to throw the football. That's why quarterbacks are just so much rare, and there's so fewer of them. Where there are running backs, there are so many. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Same thing with like defensive tackle. It's not that defensive tackles don't have to be particularly tall. Same thing with offensive guards. Offensive tackles get paid more because there's just fewer body types. Offensive tackles tend to be 6'5", 6'6", stuff like that. Offensive guards can be shorter individuals, and they're just big. There's lots of big dudes like that can play defensive tackle, offensive tackle. There's just very few human beings on the planet that have the skill set of a wide receiver or a running back, or a cornerback or an offensive tackle or a defensive end or a quarterback. And that's why those guys get paid more, and because there's fewer of them to choose from.
Yeah. No, that completely makes sense. So we're going to talk about quarterbacks, though, and you're going to talk about top 12. What would your top 12 quarterbacks be? So obviously, Patrick Mahomes.
I would love if you put like a list in front of me, because I know I'm going to miss people if you don't. I would love if you put a list. I mean, yes, I'm going to put Mahomes first. I know there are other measurements here, but I would definitely put Mahomes first, and I'm going to probably put.
That's kind of where I have.
Cool. I'm probably going to say, man, it's tough.
I mean, I said as of stats, I mean, as an Eagles fan who went to the Super Bowl, and we lost to the Chiefs. I mean, at the time it was upsetting, but then obviously once I looked at Patrick Mahomes' stats for the 2022 season, I honestly didn't feel so horrible. So, I mean, I said that Patrick Mahomes was to me the top quarterback for.
Let me see here. I would say. No, I would put Josh Allen second. I would probably put Burrow third. The problem with Jalen Hurts is the way he played on that playoff run. I would put him second, but right now I'm going to say he's fourth. I want to see him do that again, and I want to see him do it again without studs at wide receiver and at tight end, and 4 studs on the offensive line and studs at running back. I want to see him do it with like average. They are so
average people.
The Eagles were so deep at every position. The Eagles, if you took position by position, were clearly a better team than the Chiefs. The Chiefs were so much better though at D tackle, tight end, and a quarterback.
Okay.
And they made up for everything else by pretty much those 3 positions. Okay. And so that's where I would say it's definitely different. I'd probably put Josh Allen 2. I'd probably put Burrow 3. I would put Hurts 4, and then afterwards I would say I'm going to put definitely Herbert against Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to say Herbert 5, and then afterwards I think you were not going to see Geno Smith do that again.
Well, apparently Geno Smith's contract this year is based on him doing this as well as he did for 2022 season.
I'm actually going to put Lamar Jackson 7. And then
now that he's healthy and he's back.
Yeah, for sure. And then after that, I would put probably Trevor Lawrence and then Goff. And then, man, it's hard for me to put Tagovailoa up there because I'm not really sure yet, man. I'm not really sure
if he's going to come back from all the
thing
concussions.
Is, I know what I'm going to get from Kirk Cousins. I know what I'm going to get. I'm going to get the same thing, and then when we get to the playoffs, he's going to choke and he's going to throw interceptions. I know that. But you just know that's what he's going to do every year, right?
Apparently, Tua is apparently. I've seen that because I love Tyreek Hill in Miami. I think he's a beast. That Tua is practicing jiu-jitsu moves for the offseason. I swear that's what he said. He's doing jiu-jitsu moves during the offseason.
So the jiu-jitsu moves that he's talking about, because I took jiu-jitsu for like 15 years, what he's talking about is how to fall.
Yeah, exactly.
There's ways to fall so you don't hurt yourself. So yeah, I can definitely believe that. I would actually put Aaron Rodgers. If I was going to say performance-wise, I would probably put Aaron Rodgers like 4th or 5th. I would actually move him up in that list that we just talked about.
Even though he's going to be in the Jets. So we don't know
the Jets have good receivers. The Jets have a good defense. The Jets have good running backs. The Jets have good offensive linemen. I think that what the Jets missed, you saw the shell of a good team there. I think what they missed was a quarterback.
Yeah.
So I would say probably he's going to be 4th or 5th. If Aaron Rodgers was league MVP, I would not be shocked with that team. I really think people, they think of the Jets as being trash because they've been trash so long, and they don't see that there's so many great pieces on that team. And so I forgot what the right tackle's name is, but that dude's all world. Like they really have some really good pieces there. So I would not be surprised if they end up I would pick them to win their division.
Okay.
Yep. Over the Bills. I would pick them to win the division.
Yeah, so Dak, you would put there. Obviously, this was for 2022. So Tom Brady was 2022, but he's obviously not going to be there now. It's for 2023.
But I would move Aaron Rodgers and And
What do you
Lamar
think
Jackson
about
way
Brock
up.
Purdy? Do you think Brock Purdy's going to have a great year this year?
He has a surgery on his elbow, so he's not going to play most of the year. So I don't think so.
You don't think he's going to play for the 49ers too much? Who's going to play then?
They're going to probably put who's the quarterback they drafted? I can't remember the he's another running quarterback. I forgot what his name is. But no, Purdy is he has a reconstruction of his elbow, so he's not going to be playing for probably the first 9 months, something like that.
Okay. I didn't think that was happening yet.
Yep. That's going to be a pretty big deal for him. He's going to miss most of the year because that, like the last play when they're playing the Eagles, he came back to throw the ball, and it was Brandon Graham, I think, who hit him right here.
Yeah, one of them.
And tore his elbow up. Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting. The thing is, I mean, we can make all these predictions, but I just think with quarterbacks, it's one of these things like it's the chicken or the egg. Good quarterbacks can make average players better, but only so much. And really good players can make average quarterbacks better, but really so much. And so the question would be like with Tua Tagovailoa, how much did Tyreek Hill make him better? Man, it is really easy when you know it's cover 2 every fucking time because you got the fastest man in the world playing wide receiver. You understand that your tight end is never going to be double covered because they got to have a too high shell. When you have one player like Tyreek Hill, what it does is you can never just run regular man against him because you can never, if the quarterback, any good quarterback sees that it's one-on-one, he just makes an audible and Tyreek runs the 9 route and he can outrun anyone. So the problem when you do that is now to a certain extent you always know what the coverage is. You know that 2 guys are accounted for in man-to-man with Tyreek Hill, unless you're inside the 20. And so what happens is because 2 of those safeties have to stay high, or the safety shades over to the side that Tyreek Hill is, that's the reason why your tight end gets so open. This is why Travis Kelce was so devastatingly good, was because he could never get double covered because you had Tyreek Hill there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you put Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce on the same side, you can't double cover both of them. And so Travis was always going to get open. And the thing is, because he was so much bigger than the defensive backs that were covering him, he could just body them up. He could box them out just like a power forward. That's why he was so effective playing tight end. And so that's the reason why that worked out so well for them. So that's the situation now. They still have McCole Hardman. They still have Juju Smith-Schuster. They still got guys who can take the top off the defense, which is why they're still able to pull it off. But here's another great example. When you think about Tyreek Hill trading him, it's like, oh my God, how could you trade Tyreek Hill? He might be the best wide receiver in the NFL or one of the best.
Yeah,
but the things you get back for him, instead of having to pay him, is the reason why you do that. And this is something that
I don't know what the trade was about that,
but you got a bunch of assets and you got a bunch of picks, right? The NFL teams love picks because picks that's cheap labor. If you can get a guy who can play,
good point.
If you get a guy who could play, what's it called, replacement level at left guard, and you don't have to pay him what you would pay Quentin Nelson or pay Zach Martin, then you would do that. If you have to pay Zach Martin $15 million a year, but you can get a replacement level guy who's not as good as Zach Martin, but you're saving $15 million that you can use to get depth on your offensive line, your defensive line, then you just have to do that. And it's also one of the reasons why a lot of teams don't draft guards high in the first round, because let's say you have an all-world guard like Quentin Nelson, then you have to pay them, or a Marshall Yanda or something like that. You have to pay them. And once you pay them, that means that money, once you give 17, 18 million to a left guard, you can't give that to a tackle.
No.
That's one tackle you can't pay. That's one left tackle, right tackle you can't pay. That's a wide receiver you can't pay. And so when you look at Pro Football Focus, they go over like how you should pay positions, and it's very clear. It's quarterback is like 2 to 1. Quarterback's like 50 million. That's what you're going to pay him. A top level wide receiver or corner is going to be like 21, 22 million. And then when you talk about a left tackle or a defensive end, we're talking about 18 to 20 million is what you're going to pay them. And then everyone else gets paid less. So we're talking safeties, fullbacks, guards, centers, defensive tackles, inside linebackers. Those guys are all going to get paid less than edge rushers, a defensive, like offensive lineman, tackles, and then wide receivers and cornerbacks.
I mean, I completely agree. I think that, that's how people kind of should be paid, and it's kind of how they are being paid.
But it's when you see teams not do that, it's when they lose. It's when you pay Zeke Elliott, then you lose.
When you pay one person too much money, then that's when it's going to be a problem.
Or you get to that point where it's like almost fully guaranteed contract, and then so you're on the cusp. So on the cusp would be what the Cowboys tried to do with Dak Prescott. It's what Lamar Jackson had to go through, and it's what Kyler Murray had to go through.
I still don't think Kyler Murray's beyond worth $46.1 million a year.
Of course he's not. But the problem is, do you remember how horrendous that Kirk Cousins deal was when they first did it? It was fully guaranteed, and people were like, that's crazy. But if you look at that Kirk Cousins deal now for the production he has, he's like he's like a top 7-8 quarterback in the last 7 years.
Yeah.
And he's probably the 7th or 8th highest paid quarterback in the last 7 or 8 years. So it's not a horrible deal once you, like when Dak Prescott was the highest paid player in the NFL, people were like, that's insane. Now he's not the highest paid player.
No, not at all.
Because that's how it works. Whoever's up for their new deal will always reset the market, but they don't have to be necessarily that much better. It's just quarterbacks are compared to other quarterbacks. So here's the thing you have to make your decision on. Is your quarterback, worthy of the $50 million contract, or do you secretly have a Ryan Fitzpatrick or a Jameis Winston? Do you secretly have a guy who like never isn't like an Andy Dalton? Do you secretly have a guy who's like, he can come in when your team is shit, but like he's never really going to take you anywhere?
No.
And do you, but is that...
I would rather have the win, which is why I see why the Jets obviously chose Rodgers.
But the thing is, like, now you're sitting exactly with Zach Wilson,
Yes.
right? So when you look at the situation, you're playing a game of chicken with a quarterback, and if you lose, you just wasted $50 million, and that's why the whole Lamar Jackson thing happened. And in the end, what happened? They paid him. They paid him, and he got the biggest deal. Lamar Jackson, just for those of you who don't know, his deal is the most per any year in the history of the NFL. Meaning, his first year, he makes more than any first-year contract in NFL. His second year, he makes more than any player in the NFL in his second year. And what happened was, he got that, and a lot of teams thought he wasn't going to get it because of what happened with Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson has 22 sexual assault allegations against him.
Wild.
And then after the allegations, when Cleveland wanted him, they're like, we're going to trade for you, but in order to make this trade work, we're going to give you a fully guaranteed contract. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. When you give him when you make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL and give it fully guaranteed, because Cleveland is just as desperate as the Jets were trying to get Aaron Rodgers. When you do that, what that does is it doesn't just screw your team if it's wrong. You screw every other team, because now no quarterback, there's no way Lamar Jackson can say, you gave that rapist fucking $250 million and you won't pay me, bitch. Are you kidding me? That's what happened. What happened was there were two problems. Number one, it was a huge gamble on Cleveland. If it's wrong, you're stuck with him. It's a guaranteed it's fully guaranteed contract. So that's the first issue. The second thing is the moral discrepancy of rewarding a guy who has 22 pending sexual assault charges. Right. That's the second problem. But the third problem is this: is like, if you're Lamar Jackson, you can't take less than a guy who has 22 sexual assault charges. Do you understand?
That's a very good point.
So you have this problem where Baltimore's like, we're not really sure if you want to pay me. And then Lamar's like, well, I don't care what you pay me, but you're not going to pay me less than Deshaun Watson.
Receives.
You're not going to, there's no way. So what happened in the end, he held out, and the Baltimore Ravens came to the realization that everyone else has come to, which is even if he's borderline, it's like when Cowboy fans get upset about Dak Prescott and like, well, we're going to get another quarterback. I'm like, you don't understand how this works. If Dak Prescott is even in the appearance of a top 10 quarterback, you have to pay him anything he wants, because those human beings do not grow on trees. There's very few like really
great quarterbacks in the league.
No, forget great. Like second or third tier quarterbacks. We're still talking less than 15 people in the world that can do that, do that job.
Do it well.
So when you do that, when you realize that you have to pay those players, they have 100% of the leverage. Lamar, if you don't think he's good enough, or if you do think he's good enough, it doesn't make any difference, because he's on the cusp. At least you would have to admit, by his play, MVP level play, he's on the cusp of somewhere between 4th to 10th best quarterback in the league. You've got to give him the $50 million a year. And when I say you got to, I mean, like, if you don't, you've set your franchise back to where you're constantly picking quarterbacks in the first round. There's a chance Bryce Young does not turn out to be a good player. There really doesn't. And if he doesn't, then you just blew a first round pick. This huge asset that you had, you blew it on a player that ended up not being that good. That's why it's so incredibly important.
Well, what does that look at the Texans, who traded and got that so they could have the second and the third round pick?
And I think that's going to work out better for them. I think that was a really, really good move for them. I think when you see the situation with Kyler Murray, you're going to end up the issue with Kyler Murray is not that he's not talented. He's very talented. It's just he doesn't want to learn. It's very clear that Kyler Murray is not interested. There's a clause in his contract that states he has to do X amount of film study. Can you imagine how insane that is? Like, because he's addicted to playing video games. Like there's actual guy, like there's videos where they show, because they know what his gamer tag is, and you can see him playing. Like, guys have been playing against him, and he's just playing all the time. And that's one of the problems that you have with a guy like that, is that he just doesn't want to. He's very much like a Kyrie Irving. Like, he's incredibly talented but super hard-headed. Yeah. And so that's what you realize. Like, a significant portion of your $1 billion, if you're one of the Bidwells who owns the Cardinals, your significant portion of your $1 billion of net worth is tied up in this 120-something-year-old human being, only because he can throw a football. When you realize, like, you're playing chicken with fate. when you get into these situations. I can't imagine how stressful
I feel like
these
you're coming
things
with
are.
all these quote lines.
Yeah,
Playing
well, I
chicken
appreciate-
with fate.
You are. You're playing chicken with like fate, like, because again, you're stuck with this guy for a long time if it doesn't work out. Now, I think Dak Prescott is above the line. He's shown you enough times that he is capable of playing well. Whereas, like, you know, when you deal the thing with Fields took you to a Super Bowl, so you got to pay him. Like, there's no way you can't pay him. You have to pay him. Because it doesn't make any difference even if he regresses next year. The fact that he was able to do that, you have when his contract comes up, you have to give him. Well, actually, no, he already did get paid, didn't he? I think Fields did just get an extension, didn't he? Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm wrong. All right.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm not talking about Fields. I'm talking about Hurts. I'm talking
Oh,
about Jalen Hurts.
Hurts.
I'm sorry.
I'm like,
Yeah,
since
yeah.
when
I'm
did
sorry. I'm sorry.
Fields- I was
Yeah,
a
I'm
little
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm talking
confused.
about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, you have to pay Jalen Hurts. You have to. There's no way you can't pay him. And so that's that, because even if you have the potential, not everyone goes to the conference championship. Not everyone goes to the Super Bowl. So, you know, it's just one of these situations where I hear fans all the time, they bitch about how much money these quarterbacks are being paid. But when you look at it from a law of supply and demand, a better way to show quarterback income would be percentage of the cap. We don't do that, though. We don't. That would be a better way. You say, well, what does Trevor Lawrence make? Well, he makes 32% of the cap. That would actually make more sense, because then you compare his 32% to like Lamar Jackson. Oh, well, he makes 37% of the cap. You'd be like, man, one player on your team makes 37%, and then you see all teams are kind of like that. You know, Patrick Mahomes, 10 years, $500 million deal. You kind of come to the realization of how that whole thing works. And by the way, he won't finish that deal. Before that deal's over, he's going to renegotiate for more money. 10
He
years.
does have a lot of incentives too built into his contract.
I promise you right now that Pat Mahomes will not finish that that $500 million deal. Before he gets to like year 6 or 7, he'll renegotiate for more money. He'll be going out there trying to get that fucking what's his face and Messi. Lionel Messi. He'll be trying to get that Lionel Messi $100 million a year money. I'm telling you, before the decade's over, you're gonna have QBs making $100 million a year for sure.
But wouldn't it have to up the salary cap then?
Yeah, but they will. That's the reason why, right? The how much you pay a quarterback is going to be in direct relation to the size of the salary cap. But what it's going to be set at is like 30 to 35% of the cap will be attributed to QB1. That's just the way it's going to work. And then if you have one of these 10 or 12 superstar QB1s, then you just give him whatever the going rate is, which is 35% of the cap. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I'm being way simplistic about this, but that's kind of how you determine these
That
numbers.
should be almost in a way how it
Yeah,
goes.
that's because again, the likelihood, like, it doesn't matter how good your left tackle is. You can find another left tackle who's even a replacement level left tackle and still win a Super Bowl. You can't do that with a quarterback. You just can't do it with a quarterback.
I agree.
And the thing is, like, we go back in basketball. In basketball, all the positions have the ability to score, pass, rebound. Your MVP can be a center and your MVP can be a quarterback. In football, your MVP is a quarterback.
Right.
He is a quarterback. Unless it's Adrian Peterson, it's a fucking quarterback. That's it. That's the way it is. So unless it's
He was great. I liked
or
Adrian.
Lawrence Taylor, your MVP is a quarterback. So that's just kind of the way that whole thing works. So yeah, man, it's a really interesting conundrum, the way it works. But anyway, it's just crazy to me whenever I see good teams and bad teams. Good teams, what they do is when players, even when they're good on their upside, they get rid of them before they're too good.
Yeah.
Right? The quarterback, the Stephen Gilmore. Yeah, remember Stephon Gilmore? He played for the Patriots before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the Patriots got rid of him when he was in his prime to get assets in return because they knew they weren't going to pay him. That's the way good teams like the Patriots, who are always going to be in the mix, they do things like
Well,
that.
what do you think about Mac Jones? I mean, do you think he's a...
They didn't have a high enough pick to get a good enough quarterback, and Mac Jones he's going to be a placeholder until they find the next guy.
I think that's what it is. I don't
Yeah.
think
And-
think
but
he's great,
let-
but I don't think he sucks.
Let me tell you something else about Mac Jones. Mac Jones, as a serviceable starting quarterback, even if he's average, you can still get draft picks for him because quarterbacks do not grow on trees. A starting caliber NFL quarterback, even if he's a high first round pick, let's just say Bryce Young turns out to be not quite a bust, but he's just an average quarterback.
Right.
You can still trade him for like a low end second. You can for like a high second round pick. Because
Okay.
he's a quarterback. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, quarterbacks are so rare to find ones that are good. That's the reason why if you listen to PFF guys, they're like, keep drafting quarterbacks. Just keep drafting them. And when you hit on one, it's the jackpot. It's so much more important than any other position.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think quarterbacks are one of the key staples to any,
Yeah.
you have to have it for a team in order to do well.
Yeah.
You can do well without maybe having, you can do okay, let's just say, with not having a great quarterback, but you really do need that great quarterback to push you over to the next level.
If you have Kyle Shanahan, you can work with an average quarterback. Most OCs can't do that. Most OCs can't do that. So that's the thing. You have to have like a magnificent offensive coordinator in order to pull that off. Cool.
I'm curious to see what. I have a friend who does watch my videos apparently and thinks that Lamar Jackson is going to be the MVP this year and that the Ravens are going to the Super Bowl. I don't know how I feel about that.
I could see that they're talented at the right positions. The thing that they did, and I'm telling you, this is probably the reason why he feels this way, is they finally went out and drafted a fucking wide receiver. They went out and finally got some talent at wide receiver.
And now look at they have Odell Beckham too.
Yes, for sure. But they went out and got talent at wide receiver. That is the thing that Lamar Jackson's been asking for. Now, is that going to be the reason why they make the turn? I don't know. I really don't know. But they have a ton of talent on defense. Going off against Roquan Smith and having Patrick Queen, like they have a ton of talent back there at corner. So we'll see. I mean, it's just this league is impossible to tell. Especially you have an additional variance with a guy like Lamar Jackson because he gets hit.
Yeah, that's true.
He gets
runs. I think that's why the really good quarterbacks though are more of passers than runners these days because the ones who run are the ones who keep getting hurt more.
Yeah.
So
well, it's getting hurt more possibly, but the thing is when you run, it's so damaging to a defense's morale. And the other thing about running quarterbacks is if you look at guys like Cam Newton or a great example is Dak Prescott, that when you can run, you are so much more effective around the goal line.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of teams will drop off in efficiency once they get inside the 5. Having a running quarterback and starting running like some kind of option play or running some kind of zone read, it's just so much more devastating when you have a guy who can run. So the ability to run, I think what you're going to see is there's not going to be any more Kurt Warners in the league anymore. I just don't think you're going to see players like that in the league anymore. You're going to see pretty much everyone's going to be able to run to be a good player.
I agree. I think that's completely true.
Cool.